Hey, everybody. What's up? It is another edition of Thinking Out Loud from yet another location in the house in which I am living in Cleveland. It's Andrew Siciliano. Hope you're doing well. What is this, week 9? It's week 9. It's November. Hope you had a safe and happy Halloween. Hope you came up with a fantastic costume. Something probably not as good as what Myles Garrett did with the Terminator thing coming into the building this past Sunday. That was ridiculous. He won't reveal how much money he spent, but either way, hope you had a good Halloween. I went to dinner. I didn't do anything special, just met some friends, had dinner, and watched the other trick-or-treaters and tried to drive home safely. However, before we get to the week, the Sunday, the big games, the games that mean Sunday to us on Sunday, Sam Batesh obviously is here as well. Sam, we got to get to the game that opened up. Happy Halloween to you and yours, by the way.
Yes.
That opened up week number 9. And that was an otherwise boring game between the Jets and the Texans that all of a sudden in the fourth quarter, Jets won. They saved their season. It gave us a couple of wow moments, most notably the ridiculous Garrett Wilson catch, which other than Malachi dropping the ball on the 1-yard line, it's really the only thing notable in this game.
Andrew, without question, this catch was absolutely ridiculous. It is the moment. It is sort of one of those, is it the Odell catch is already what people are talking about.
It looked like the Jumpman thing right there. I thought I see Michael Jordan right there. I see the logo.
It is so that my cousin said exactly that in the moment that it happened as well, and just said, wow, this is going to be now, a new opportunity for Garrett Wilson to go after that, because it does look like Jordan. And he said it right there. It does because of the legs spread the way that they are. But this catch, yeah, I'll let you kind of go with it here as we just play it, because it is so spectacular. Yes, happy Halloween. This is what I will remember from Halloween, despite having a 3-year-old who dressed up. This is actually more impressive than anything that happened that night.
Listen, we could tell stories and we could do shows about, what your favorite Halloween candy is. And I can't believe somebody gave me an orange or things like that when we were kids. But this stole Halloween. Let me say 2 things. I'll tell you the story about how I saw this. So I'm out for dinner, like I said, with my broadcast partner, Nathan Zagura, here in Cleveland, his buddy as well. And we're sitting there and we're sitting at a bar or a nice steakhouse eating dinner, but at the bar, they didn't have the game on because, Amazon Prime, whatever. So we had it on my phone and we watched the first half and all of us commented, oh my God, this is an awful. And how did Malachi Corley drop that ball? I mean, dude, it's your first career touchdown. Don't you want the football? Don't you want to carry it into the end zone with you, your first career football? But I digress. Or touchdown. So I'm driving home. I am on the phone, Sam, with my significant other. I'm driving home, no longer listening to the game because I'm talking to her. She's explaining to me that, she would like a touchdown from Garrett Wilson. It would help her in fantasy. Okay. So we're talking, and she says, oh, did he get his feet down? Did he get his feet down? That tone, by the way. Did he get his feet down? I think he did. I think that might be a touchdown. I think he had the feet down. I'm like, what happened? What happened? She goes, wait, a shin means you're down, right? I said, yeah, shin's in. A shin and you're down. He goes, yeah, you know what? Yeah, Garrett Wilson got a shin down. That's a touchdown. And that was it. That was the tone. I'm like, well, what's the score now? She told me the score. I'm like, okay, cool. And then we got back to our normal conversation. Hey, I'm coming home in a few days. Yay, like we talked through other stuff about life. That was it. That was her tone. Like, yeah, I got a shin down. Wait. So I get back to the house here in Cleveland. I turn on the TV and obviously it's a couple of minutes past this now, but they come back from break and they are, of course, showing it over and over again. And I go, wait a minute, that was the touchdown? Wait, that was the touchdown that you just went, oh, I got a shin down. Like that's one of the greatest plays of all time. And the reaction was, might work out tomorrow.
Andrew, this is not only is this a special catch, clearly, I put it up there. Is it the best touchdown catch ever? I mean, I think at that point you're comparing it to the Odell catch. And there's a couple of things I just want to say about both of these. First of all, I'd like to say this much. The fact that Garrett Wilson had not one, but two one-handed touchdown passes in this game. He caught two one-handed touchdown passes because the first one, even though it wasn't in the end zone, he catches it with one hand and then takes it into the end zone. So that's memorable in and of itself. We're looking right now at the first one. And of course, in comparison, the first one is nowhere near as special as the second because it's quick, it's quicker, and it doesn't involve a replay. And he just snags that out of the air. And it looks like something he's done 1,000 times. And then he gets his second hand on it. So it's not nearly. Now, as we look at the second one again, though, which is so ridiculous, I just want to say a couple of things. I find it hysterical. The conversation that you're describing is very funny because, of course, it's nonchalant in the moment and shouldn't be at all because the catch is such a wow moment. I also just came back from trick-or-treating and going around and doing the Halloween thing with Levi and settled into the game and turned it on. And it was in this moment that I turned the game on. And at first, I'm on the phone with my cousin in New York who just says, oh, wow, could have been a catch. And now I look up to see it again. And I'm also saying, wait a second, Shin, I hadn't seen the replay of what he had done with his hand. I looked up just to see the replay of again and again and again with the shin and the knee and the leg and whether or not it was one. When I saw it in its totality, I said, that could be the greatest touchdown catch I've ever seen. It could be. And by the way, and another thing my cousin pointed out, it's after his knee does go out, but Andrew, he actually then taps his toe as well.
Yeah. Although his elbow's down at that point.
It is at that point, but it is at that point his toe also going in, which I just find unbelievable. I really just couldn't believe at that point that he had also then tapped his toe. I mean, it was just absurd. It really was. I mean, it's one of those catches. It's one of those moments where you just say, all right, did we really just see that? And one other thing, I'll give Ulbrich credit for one thing. The challenge, Andrew, what's so nice about the challenge is, God forbid that play just never happened. You know, because these plays get sort of wiped out from history entirely, right? I mean, if it's a penalty, it's sort of an out of bounds catch is what? It's not a catch. It's essentially a humongous home run that goes foul, right? It doesn't matter. It's a foul ball. It's a strike. It's nothing at all. This becomes nothing. Much like the Odell play being pass interference and then is also a catch. That was going to stand as a play. And of course, you're declining the penalty at that point because it's a touchdown. But for this to have not been a catch in the history of the league, that would have been an absolute travesty. So Ulbricht's greatest contribution.
Yeah, we've also had replay for 30 years, though. So it's not like this was like all of a sudden this is a new rule.
No,
yes, we have replay. I get
it. But thank you for getting it right, and thank you for having this catch, and thank you for allowing all of us to see it 1,000 times because it is exactly that. And
gonna see it
just
1,000 more times.
Yes.
Not that I complain. We've already shown it 100 times here, but just so everyone at home knows, it's just how the TV is made. You're going to see it 1,000 times by the time you get to Sunday. Real quick, 2014, when Odell made his catch on a Monday night, it was great. It was absurd. It was amazing. I was back then a host on NFL Network, but I was also back then during the 2014 season, somebody that would regularly do days on the previous version of the NFL Network morning show. Then it was called NFL AM. Or maybe that happened on a Thursday, whenever the game happened. It doesn't matter. So the next couple of weeks, it was the only tape that NFL AM played. Like they'd go, all right, let's go to Cowboys 49ers highlights and just play that tape. That's all they would do. Like I only do the show on Fridays, but on Fridays you preview all the weekend's games. So let's say we got Chiefs Broncos coming up. Okay. And they'd go, all right, bump in Chiefs Broncos or hey, go to break coming up next, Chiefs Broncos. I'm like, all right. So coming up next on NFL AM, and they'd be playing the Odell catch. I'm like, they run the wrong tape? No. Okay, Chiefs, Broncos? We go to break. Hey, why do we run that? Oh, because the topic bar is going to say, can anyone at the Chiefs-Broncos game make a catch like Odell? I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'm kind of exaggerating here, but that's what they did. They used that tape to get to every conversation. Like, why are we running that again? It's like a Tuesday. Well, there's not. What are we doing? What else to talk about? So we're just going to run the tape. I'm like, and what? Just talk about the play. Like, it's 3 weeks old. What? Just talk about the play. It was like when I hosted at 710 ESPN many years ago. And by the way, I saw Michael Thompson and John Ireland Wednesday because I went to the Cavs-Lakers game here in Cleveland. And we'd go to break. Program director would come in. I'm like, hey, what should we do here next segment? Just talk about the Lakers. I'm like, what about? Just about them. Like, what? It's May. Just talk about the Lakers. Anything? Just say Lakers. Got it. Okay, cool. And that is what this play will now be. It's a New York team. It's an amazing catch. It's Aaron Rodgers throwing it. So there's that. There are other games, week 9. Okay? Let's, as we do every Friday, put up the 5 games that mean something to us.
Let's please do that. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, there are many games that mean something to us, but we just had to whittle it down to 5. Okay? So, Sam, here are the 5. You want to start top left corner? Let's do that.
I think so. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Why not?
Okay. Let's do it. The 3-4 Dallas Cowboys facing the 5-3 Atlanta Falcons. The 13 seed in the NFC out of 16, the Dallas Cowboys. 13. Facing the 3 seed, the leaders in the NFC South. The Falcons have won 4 out of 5. Atlanta is coming off a 31-point game and a win. Gate. Since week 5, Kirk Cousins is averaging 310 yards a game passing. And the Cowboys just aren't good. They're under 500 through 7 games for the first time in 4 years. This is a really tough stretch for them. Their next 4 games are all teams that are well over 500. They have their worst rushing offense really ever-ish. So they're last in the NFL in rushing offense. 74 yards a game. The last time the Cowboys finished last in rushing offense was their inaugural year. 60. The last time the Dallas Cowboys were this bad running the football. And if you thought Dalvin Cook was going to save the day, I like Dalvin. It's not going to happen, as my boy Daniel Jeremiah said, and he's going to be in town this week with the Chargers here in Cleveland. What the Cowboys need is a DeLorean to go back in time to make Ezekiel Elliott and Dalvin Cook what they were 5 years ago. Listen, Dak Prescott, I know he's turning the ball over a lot. He has multiple turnovers, I believe, in 4 straight games. Not good. He is good enough to win any game, right? You got Dak, you got a chance. I do believe in Dak Prescott. Even though he's hit a rough patch, it's not all his fault. They missed Brandon Cooks. This is one of those games where I can see the Falcons not meeting the challenge. I can see the Cowboys getting a win here. I could see also Atlanta just blowing their doors off. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think Atlanta is the better team, and I don't know that it's really close. And if the Cowboys lose this, 3-5 doesn't mean you're out of it. Later in the show, there's some 2-6 teams I think are still in it. But I do think the Cowboys season is very much in danger of slipping away, considering after this one, Sam, they get the Eagles, they get the Texans, they have to go to Washington. This is a tough streak here, a tough stretch here, I beg your pardon. They badly need this one. I don't know that they're good enough to get it.
It's so interesting, Andrew. I keep telling myself eventually the Cowboys are going to be who we thought they were. And I know we use that Denny Green term all the time, but the Cowboys, I keep expecting to show up. There was part of me that really thought Sunday night against the Niners, we were going to see this special performance out of the Cowboys. And as I said to you, it was as ugly as the game the previous season. You know what it is for me? It's just odd. I think it's because the amount of seasons that I've watched, again, being an Eagles fan, the way that I have been through the years, I watch the Cowboys with a different eye. There's just every single week, I expect the Cowboys to be in it and to be vying for this division, probably because the division has gone how many seasons in a row that we've had. It's been since 2004 that we've had a repeat division winner, which would tell us again that the Cowboys are not going to win the division this year. You've said it, by the way. Take it off the ledger. It's no longer an option. The Cowboys will not win this division. You've said it. And by the way,
not going to.
And mathematically it's possible, but I'm beginning to believe you. This is the type of game that tells me, though, is it going to happen or not? Now, again, when the Eagles lost to the Falcons, that we got to go way back. That's when the Falcons, at that point, we knew nothing about it. That was a last-second Monday night win from Kirk Cousins. And in many ways, That helped propel the Falcons season at that time. We thought the Eagles were looking at 2-0 there, and it didn't happen. And we thought because of what happened to the Falcons in the first game against the Steelers, that the Falcons were really going to be a ho-hum team this season. That's what it looked like at that time. Now, though, the Falcons have put something together. We've got a 500-yard game from Kirk Cousins. We had, now, again, you're talking about now having swept Tampa the way that the Falcons have. This is a Falcons team, as you said, that is better than the Cowboys, but I keep expecting the Cowboys to show up. Now, Dak, as you mentioned, it's 3 straight games with multiple interceptions. Does that get cleaned up? It's not just that hearing that out loud means he's not going to. The trend either says, okay, this is going to happen again, he's going to turn the ball over, or that now he understands that and it's not going to happen. I said it to you before the season started. What are the Cowboys doing from a running perspective? And you just said it, the DeLorean. I don't understand how coming into the season.
They're not running is what they're doing.
No Ezekiel.
I just don't get not to run. Like to quote Jerry
Rico
Seinfeld,
Dowdle, Ezekiel Elliott.
Not to run.
And that's even why the final score of last week's game looks interesting, is only because it was at that point that you're trailing 27-10 in a game that is essentially over, that you're able to come back in what we consider garbage time. Now, normally the entire fourth quarter is not garbage time. That's sort of what that game had become. And CeeDee Lamb and Dak are electric in that fourth quarter against the Niners, and they've always got that potential. And Ferguson's had a nice season as well. But something is wrong with these Cowboys. Something is wrong.
Let me ask you this. If you believe they're going to come back, you
I
on,
have this fear.
Okay. They might, just because they're the Dallas Cowboys and they have Dak. Like I said, if you have Dak, you have a chance. If I said the name of this team was the Arlington Renegades, okay, the XFL, right? The Arlington Renegades, and you took away the mystique of the Dallas Cowboys, and you just looked at them on paper, you go, this team's no good. They're called the Dallas Cowboys, so you have this you have this blind faith, or you're blinded by the faith in their name, and you think they're going to come back.
And it's not just right. And you know what, Andrew? It's not necessarily, we're not talking about how about them Cowboys. I'm not talking Jimmy Johnson, Barry Switzer, Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, right? It's more a recency. It's the Dak Cowboys.
It is recency bias.
Correct. But I'm talking the Dak Cowboys have been so relevant. Can we say that much? I mean, in a standings perspective, the Dak Cowboys have been relevant. They've been on TV all the time. They've been in the race. They've been in the race, and they have been a viable contender for this division year in and year out with Dak Prescott as their quarterback, including the first season where he took the league by storm as a rookie, and essentially Jerry Jones was able to say goodbye to Tony Romo because of what Dak had done. It was, and again, they didn't win a playoff game that year. Obviously, that ridiculous Jared Cook, Aaron Rodgers play, yes. But these Cowboys, offensively, it's not happening the way that it normally does. And by the way, I'm going to say, I think if I'm going to pinpoint what it is, Micah Parsons could be that difference. Micah Parsons could. That could.
He's not playing again.
He's not.
And he was a heck of a high school running back in Pennsylvania. Maybe they need to give him the ball.
Should try that
if he were back. But Micah Parsons coming back ain't going to fix things automatically.
I'm willing to say it'll be a different different look. It's a team that's not gonna. Again, what the Lions did to them is still, to me, what spells the season more than anything, because that was the embarrassing game at home against a team that you think you're going to contend for to actually win the NFC, which is what you expect. And that's it. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. You know what? That's it. We're
already giving them too much time. Period. The Dallas Cowboys, everybody. You want to go around? Let's go. Colts-Vikings is Sunday night. Let's skip that one. Let's go. We'll get that eventually. Okay. Let's go in no particular order. We'll just stick with a good NFC game. You want to do that? Let's do the Lions and the Packers here.
I love it.
Right? Lions and Packers, everybody. This is going to sound weird, but just for a little historical perspective, this is the best, this late in the season, and there's a qualifier. This is the best Lions-Packers game this late in the season since JFK was in office. It's been that long.
Wow.
Thanksgiving Day, 1962 was the last time you had a game this late in the season when the Lions and the Packers both had records like this. Detroit 6-1, Green Bay is 6-2. Right now, Detroit's the 1 seed of the NFC. If the if the Packers win this and the Commanders also lose to the Giants, unlikely, but if that were to happen, then we open up next week, week 10, with Green Bay as the number 1 seed in the NFC. So there's a lot on the line in this game. Time this late in the season, these two teams were this good. The game was played at Tiger Stadium. All right. So there's just a little perspective here. And as we tape this on Friday evening, we don't know about Jordan Love. I'm going to assume he's going to be listed as questionable, and Matt LaFleur will not even admit that he has seen Jordan Love in person in an entire week. I don't know who that is. Malik Willis clearly changes the equation here. Jordan Love, I give a far better chance to win than with Malik Willis, but to Willis's credit, he's played really, really, really well. Let me say this about the Lions. I will be absolutely stunned and floored if they are not in New Orleans representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. I'll say it right now. They are the best team in the NFC. They are going to the Super Bowl. Write it down. Now, does that mean they're going to win this game? I don't know. They won the last 2 years at Lambeau. They have a 100-point differential this year, the Lions. They are outscoring the opposition by 100 points. And they're averaging 43 points a game. Now, I do think Jeff Hafley is going to throw some different looks here at Jared Goff. I think his underreported stories this year in the NFL. The former BC head coach who left to become the DC in Green Bay. And the Packers are going to run the bleep out of the football, right? To quote Brown special teams coach Bubba Ventrone, I beg your pardon, not Patrone. I could use some. Bubba Ventrone this week when discussing Jim Harbaugh's Chargers, they are going to run the bleep out of the football. That's what the Packers are going to do. But I like the Lions in this one. I do, because I think they're a freight train barreling down the track. I think they are that good.
Two things for you on this one, Andrew. First of all, I want to say that, was it 3 seasons ago, the final game of the season? Dan Campbell's first season, the last game of the year was Lions-Packers in Green Bay. The Lions knocked the Packers out of the playoffs, and the Lions weren't going that season, but that was the beginning of the run of what Dan Campbell has created. I believe it was 2 seasons ago.
It was actually 2 seasons ago. It was Aaron Rodgers' last game.
Last game as a Packer, exactly. So that game, Andrew, was obviously a very meaningful one. Both teams did not go to the playoffs, but it was sort of it was a fun sort of elimination game for the Packers there if the Lions could, and they did. And that was when the Lions really could not win in Green Bay. That was sort of the story, is that they hadn't done it and that they couldn't do it. That game was meaningful for a couple of reasons, right? Meaningful because it ended up being Rodgers' last game. But the statement that I really want to take away from what you said is the Lions will represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. It's what it looks like right now. The 100-point differential is pretty amazing. The only thing I want to say to throw a wrinkle in that, and it doesn't have to do with the Lions and Packers. And by the way, I will say this much. I see the Packers winning this game. I see this as a game. I see it as a game where the Packers are now establishing themselves in this. You know, because of how exciting Minnesota was to start the season. It's and look, the Bears are certainly a story in the NFC North as well. This looks like last year's AFC North in many ways in regards to all the teams being viable and potential playoff teams, etc. That's what it looks like right now in this division. But the Packers think that they were a play away from being in the NFC Championship game last season when they were up against the Niners. But the team I want to throw in here is, I just think San Francisco hasn't shown us what they are yet. I don't think it's the same conversation I was having about the Cowboys and just saying, okay, when I see Niners, I just think that's a team that could be the best in the NFC. The Niners, from an injury standpoint, I just think McCaffrey on the field, off the field, makes the Niners a different conversation. And until we see that, I just don't know that it's fair to say that about them. In this game, that Seattle game, with what Goff did, you and I said it was the best game we had seen Goff play since, at this point, I believe it was 5 seasons ago. There was a Thursday night game against the Vikings where Goff
was more than 5. That was a long time ago. Yeah.
That was the Super Bowl season
ago, I think.
You're right. You're right. That was the 2018 season. It was the 2018 season
shootout that year as well.
Yes, the Monday Nighter. Yes, absolutely. But the Thursday night game that season, that Rams team, Goff led to the Super Bowl. and they lost to the Patriots. But that was as good as Goff looked from 2018 as he did in that Seattle game. And that said, maybe that is a difference this season. And let's not forget, the Lions also were up in that NFC Championship game against the Niners and seemingly going to the Super Bowl. I mean, it looked like
they're not going to lose again. I mean, not again. I mean, if they face the Niners again, I don't think the Niners are the matchup, but I give the Niners, sure, the ability to get off the mat. But I'll just caution this: just because Kyle Shanahan says that Christian McCaffrey might practice next week doesn't mean he's playing next week. Opening the window and running through that window, you don't see. Now, we had it here in Cleveland last week. Wyatt Teller came back. They opened up the window. He played. It's not out of the realm of possibility. All injuries are different. They're going to have to work him back into it. That's all.
It's a very fair point. I see the Packers in this one, just interesting to be on opposite sides here, but also I feel like the Lions are not going to just steamroll through an entire season, and these divisional games tend to be the speed bumps.
Absolutely, and it's the best division in football. Let's put that slide back up here. Do you want to stick with the NFC? Let's do that. Then we'll get to the fighting Bo Nixes here.
I like it.
Taking it to Baltimore. It's going to be Chicago and Arizona in a sneaky good one here. And this game is in Arizona. The Bears are 4-3 coming off the heartbreaking loss to the Commanders a week ago. The Cardinals are 4-4. They beat the Dolphins and I think surprised the majority of the football world. This is not a playoff game, but it's close. The Bears are the 8th seed right now, so they're right outside. The Cardinals are the 4th seed. To show you the difference, and I just said we agree, the NFC North is obviously the best division in the NFL. To show you the difference here, so the Cardinals are 4-4. They have a worse record than the Bears. They are in first in the NFC West. The Bears at 4-3, better record, are in last in the NFC North. Last, because the Lions, the Vikings, the Packers, they all have 5 wins. Bears have 4. The Cardinals are in first because they're perfect in the division. Look, they're a good team. They're a good enough team. But the Cardinals have beaten teams and lost to good teams. That's kind of how it works. The Bears have not won on the road. However, this is an interesting test to see how they bounce back. They got to lean on DeAndre Swift. I don't blame Caleb for last week at all. He led 2 potential game-winning drives, and not his fault. An offensive lineman, first of all, not his fault they called that play. Not his fault an offensive lineman fumbled it. The fridge ain't walking through that door. The Cardinals have lost when they go up in weight class, right? So they lost to the Bills. They lost to the Lions. They lost to the Commanders. They lost to the Packers. What are the Bears? So this is kind of a test. Like, what are the Bears here? They're a team that has 4 wins, that has showed you some good signs, but a team that has not won on the road. The game in London, I believe, was a neutral site victory. I'm fairly certain it was at a home game, regardless. Whatever. They won in
neutral, regardless. Yeah, it's neutral.
They are winless on the road. But Kyler is playing out of his mind. Just that he's throwing dots and running well. He's not turning the ball over, and he's not getting sacked. He hasn't been sacked in 3 games. First half of the season, first quarter of the season, getting sacked all the time. So even though the defense is not good, they're bottom 10 in almost everything. They're doing enough. I'm not yet a Cardinal believer, but I'm a believer in the Cardinals this week.
This one's really fascinating, Andrew. I think had the Bears won that game, and I understand they did everything to win that game. I don't know why that one just says to me, okay, I'm not quite there on the Bears, but it's also probably the stack of the division. I think you're exactly right. You made a great point about the records being so similar here, one being in first place, one being in last place. It's probably what the Bears have to look up at in their division that feels so different between these two teams. But I'm going to say this much. Arizona, which team has been more surprising this season in a positive way? It's tough to say. They're in similar buckets in a way. I thought the week one... I thought the week 1 performance by the Cardinals in Buffalo.
Yeah.
There isn't. I just thought that I thought Arizona looked similar to what they were last season. When this season started week 1 and they lost to Buffalo, I thought, all right, more of the same from Arizona. They're going to be this adorable team that's tough to put away, but eventually everyone is still beating them. But that's not what happened. They proved big wins. And I'll say this much. The Rams, as injured as they were in that game, is probably why we say that's not really a weight class game, because the Rams obviously would have a healthier version on the field, and it was a ridiculous score in that game. But the Detroit game was really interesting. Arizona had a chance to win that game. There was a whistle that saved a pick 6 from Jared Goff. The game 3 plays later, Montgomery was in the end zone on a spectacular play by the Lions, by the way, a great trick play that went for a touchdown. But the pick 6 in that game completely sways it. It was a 1-score game, 20-13. That game tells me Arizona can play with anybody in the NFC. This to me looks like now Arizona beginning to show us, okay, they're really here to stay. This feels like this to me feels like this. Yeah, they're going to pull this off. And of course, look, the Bears have every reason to say, wow, could there be a more, I mean, again, motivation doesn't mean anything in this league. We know that. And it doesn't matter who deserves to win. And that is absolutely irrelevant, but it would feel like, okay, the Bears are the most bitter team. Are they the most bitter team in the league based on what happened? I mean, getting beat by a Hail Mary when you come back like that is difficult with no time on the clock, for it to happen the way it did, for it to be such a clean, ridiculous tip up. And especially with what Stevens had done ahead of that. And I mean, the Bears are reeling here. And of course it feels like a motivated and wounded opponent, but Arizona, that was impressive. I also thought this much, Andrew. Miami with Tua back was looking every bit of last year's Dolphins from an offensive standpoint. It looked like the Dolphins had gotten right. Arizona showed me something. 3 straight games where Arizona's had essentially a walk-off field goal here to win games. That's pretty impressive. The way 3 straight of their wins, obviously 3 of 4. But I mean, what they did to the Niners,
that speaks a lot.
What they did to the Chargers and what they did to Miami, to have 3 wins over their last 4 that have all been close like that. It feels like this could be another close one, and I just see Arizona again winning it with a kick. That's just what I see on this one.
All right, we kind of agree on that one. Although, look, Caleb has been playing well, and would love to see. We've had classic Bears-Cardinals games in Arizona in the past. One comes to mind. Maybe we get.
Did we not even say that? We didn't even say that for this.
I don't even. No, don't you don't.
Okay, we're not. Okay,
yeah,
we're not. Okay.
Let's move on to Denver and Baltimore, because that is a legit playoff game of the AFC. The Broncos are the 5 seed right now. The Ravens are the 6 seed. These are 2 wild card teams. If the playoffs were to start right now, which I know they don't. If the playoffs were to start right now, by the way, we'd have 6 new teams in the NFL playoffs that didn't make it a year ago. And the Broncos would be one of those teams. Ravens had won 5 in a row. They lost here in Cleveland last week. Broncos, since week 3, remember they opened 0-2. The Broncos have won 5 out of 6. They've gone 5-1 since opening 0-2. Bo Nix is playing really well. My buddy James Palmer, I believe after week 2, tweeted something that, like, you know, the other team's DBs, I can't remember who they lost to week 2, were kind of sort of like laughing at Bo Nix. They knew the route tree, or they knew the progression. Like, it was so watered down for the kid that, you know, they thought it was funny. He's played well since then. Matter of fact, he's played great. We talked about Caleb and we talked about Jaden Daniels. Bo Nix leads all rookie quarterbacks with 12 touchdowns, passing and rushing, like total. Believe it or not Jaden Daniels. Might want to check on that, but that's the note that I have. So he has been playing well. This is a big bounce back game for Baltimore. I don't say embarrassed, but look, they thought they should have won that game last week. They had how many drops of game-changing plays? Not only just Kyle Hamilton, but Rashad Bateman as well. I mean, they could have, would have, should have won that game, but they didn't. They lost, and I think they're going to get home, and they're going to take it out on the Broncos. But you can't let Denver hang around. Now, Denver's offense is not explosive at all, but the Ravens can't close. So if the Broncos are close, this game gets interesting, because Baltimore, and it's not just this year, they blew the 10-point lead to the Raiders. They blew, the lead as well to the Browns. They can't close. The last really 4 years, they have the fourth quarter 5% more than the next worst team. Doesn't matter. They've had a bunch of coordinator changes, over the last couple of years. Now it's Zach Orr, Dean Pease has come in to help. This defense is struggling. This secondary is struggling. They had the worst pass defense in football coming into the game against the Browns, and then Jameis threw for 334. Now, no Marlon Humphrey, no TJ Tampa, no Wiggins, Nate Wiggins, the rookie first rounder out of Clemson. They should get Humphrey and Wiggins back this week. That changes things considerably. Because Williams, who was in essence benched last week, is going to play this week. It's going to change. But Baltimore games are all the same. A lot of explosives. They lead the NFL in explosives offensively, and they lead the NFL in giving up explosives. Then you have the Harbaugh v. Sean Payton factor. Got a couple of Super Bowl winning coaches. Game is that they're like, how often, Sam, do you get Nance and Romo for a 1:00-er? And that's what this is. This is, I know there are attention like the NFC North game we just did, but this game is pretty good.
It's surprising that the Broncos are in a game. I mean, it's been how long that we've been excited about a Broncos game?
I've never been excited about a Broncos game. They ruined my childhood.
That's fine. And we didn't even mention maybe the most exciting Broncos-Ravens game that either one of us have seen in recent times was the double overtime Peyton Manning versus Joe Flacco game where the Ravens went on to win the Super Bowl that season, the season that Flacco had bet on himself and won Super Bowl MVP.
I was late to your house and I missed that play.
Remember that, Andrew? Yes, exactly. And I believe the next game, after that was Nick Foles in a loss to the Saints, an Eagles team that lost to the Saints, a home game, by the way. So that's what we ended up watching together after that. But for this game, Andrew, it comes down to this. 6 of the last 8 games, the Broncos have allowed their opponents no more than 20 points.
Yeah.
Very special defensively.
Vance Joseph, everybody.
However, the Ravens in every game this season have scored 20 or more. So it comes down to that. Which am I believing in more? Which is more likely here? Do I think the Broncos are holding the Ravens to 20 or less? Do I think the Ravens are scoring 20 or more? I'm going to say I see the Ravens scoring more than 20 here. It may only be 21, but I see the Ravens scoring 20 here and holding on. And here's the other thing that doesn't make sense. You say the Ravens can't close games, and you're right. It's been an issue now for 2 seasons. I just don't understand how with Derrick Henry, it's really not.
4 seasons.
Okay, you're right. Last season, it was highlighted so much, obviously. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense, does it? They're the best rushing team in football last season. They're the best rushing team this year. They added Derrick Henry to the best rushing team. I mean, that was ridiculous to begin with. And so isn't that essentially the Mariano Rivera of the NFL? If you can rush the ball well, that's it. And yet, I mean, look, it's obvious. I mean, Kyle Shanahan is known for running the ball. And of course, no one thinks that he's the best at closing games either. I know he's got that moniker as well, but it feels like these Ravens should be better at closing games. And you're right. The Cowboys game almost got away from them. We understand what happened against the Raiders. Last week was not about closing a game. That was a game where the Browns simply beat them. But this feels like the Ravens figure out a way against the Broncos. Again, if I'm going to take those two with the 20-point threshold, which seems to be a key number here, I'm going to say Ravens over the 20 versus under, and that'll be the difference in that game.
You know, what's crazy is that going back to last week real quick, the Browns, you said the Ravens couldn't close. The Browns have like the 3rd best 4th quarter point differential in the NFL. Statistically, in the second half, Jim Schwartz's defense have in each game, really. I mean, look, the Commanders game was a blowout. Throw that one out. But second half defense, Browns have been great second half defense. And that's what's even more frustrating here about this team, the Browns, which we're not really talking about this week, is the fact that they have that 4th quarter point differential, but have been unable to get those final touchdowns they need to beat the Giants, to beat the Raiders, to beat whomever. But I digress. That 4th quarter point differential and that 4th quarter defense actually worked last week for the Browns to beat the Ravens, who I still think, I said before last week, I thought it was the best team in football. I don't know that anymore. If Deontay Johnson was maybe a defensive end or a pass rusher, I would have felt better about that trade this week. But they're still really good. And I do think here that they beat the Denver Broncos. And our final game here is the Sunday night game. This game, Sunday night, got flexed in to Sunday night. It's the Colts and it's the Vikings on Sunday Night Football. Jacksonville and Philly had been there, and they moved that to the afternoon. Anyway, real quick thought on this one. I don't have anything really too deep on this one, other than this is, for many reasons, the most fascinating game of the week. You have the Vikings with 2 losses after opening 5-0, and you have Joe Flacco starting for the Colts. Shane Steichen said that both he and Chris Ballard, the GM, sat down with Anthony Richardson after benching him late Tuesday for maybe 45 minutes and explained it. Ryan Kelly, the center, who was very frustrated with Richardson tapping out on Sunday, we talked about a lot of this in our last episode, said that the revolving door at quarterbacks, and now he's had 12 of them as a center, is also getting frustrating. You have to prioritize winning, but you're doing it now by benching Richardson at the sake of developing your top 5 quarterback. Anthony Richardson is going to learn, and he is going to get another shot. This game will go a long way in telling you when that shot will come. Because if Joe Flacco comes out, and if Flacco can carve up Brian Flores' defense, which didn't blitz Matthew Stafford a lot, had a lot of simulated pressures, they dropped into coverage. Maybe they blitz Joe Flacco a little bit more. He, like Stafford, not mobile. I don't know. But if Flacco comes out and he looks like the Joe Flacco that we saw here in Cleveland down the stretch last year, and they get a win and they get something going here, you're not going to see Anthony Richardson for a while. And then what? Where is the development of your quarterback heading into year 3 that you took at number 4 overall? It's the Vikings, the Bills, the Jets, the Lions, the next 4 games for the Colts. Yeah, Joe Flacco slinging the football is going to give you a better chance to win those games. But you took Anthony Richardson knowing he had only started a dozen games at Florida. So you hit pause. When are you going to take the finger off pause and let the kid back in? For who, for what? You really think Joe Flacco's taking you to the AFC Championship? I don't know. I think they're going to win some games, and you have to take into account all the other coaches in your building, all the other players in your building that are really year to year. That's how this league is. You got to make them happy too. But at what cost organizationally? And that makes this game so important.
I love this game, Andrew. I love this game. This is the number 1 game of the week in my estimation. And I'm happy to let the Eagles flex out of that in the Doug Peterson Bowl with Eagles and Jaguars. Statue for Doug Peterson in Philadelphia, and that'll always matter. But what's happening this season in Jacksonville, nobody needs to see more of. And they can play the rest of their games in London for all we care at this point. But I'll say this about this particular game and what you just said about Anthony Richardson. At first, remember the story originally was, we're doing this so Anthony can get a rest. Remember that was originally Steichen said, we're going to take it as 1 week and we're going to see what happens. And that was it. Right. And you and I kind of loved that mentality initially, which was, guess what? Now, if you lose this game to Minnesota, you can easily go back to Anthony Richardson and say, no big deal. We took a shot. Yes, you can. But what I love about suggesting that this move is for the rest of the season is that Joe Flacco is the guy. Here's why I like it. This is not RG3 and Cousins, who's going to be the future face of our franchise. This is Joe Flacco, who's going to be a quarterback coach more likely than he's going to be a quarterback next season, although I would put nothing past Joe Flacco at this point. But it's not as if Joe Flacco is going to be the future of the Colts beyond this season. Again, could they make an AFC Championship run? I've seen crazier things. Sure, whatever. But even if that does happen, you're not going to be in this conundrum where you're signing Joe Flacco to a long-term contract when the season is done. So you can easily give it back to Anthony Richardson. And it comes down to this, Andrew. Is Jordan Love a better quarterback because he sat and watched Aaron Rodgers? Was Aaron Rodgers a better quarterback because he sat and watched Brett Favre? Yes, we can say that. But then again, last week, you and I were so excited to see Caleb go up against Jaden Daniels. Sometimes you get a rookie quarterback, you throw him in there, and you actually end up with immediate impact on your franchise, and it makes a difference.
But both of those guys had 4 and 5 years, or 3 for Caleb. No, 1, 2, like 3.5, like considerable starting experience, right? When you took Anthony Richardson, you did so saying, hey, we need to develop him. It's going to take time. The guy's barely played. Well, now you pull the plug. All right.
It's okay to pull the plug in this case because of Flacco. That's simply how I'll say it. And one other thing, isn't it odd to think Andrew Luck was the quarterback of the Colts? I mean, just it's funny sometimes to go back to look at what Ryan Kelly has gone through, as you said, the litany of quarterbacks, and then you think, wow, it felt like, this franchise once defined stability at quarterback. Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, it looked like it was going to happen. And they have found successes since Luck, here and there. Here and there they have found it. They found it with Phillip Rivers. But it's just interesting to think that they're in a situation again where quarterback's a question mark. I think Anthony Richardson, this is going to benefit him. I think he can be a playmaker in this league. He has shown flashes of being every bit of Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts. He's shown flashes of being that exciting of a player. Absolutely. Even what Brock Purdy has brought to the table. He has shown flashes of that, but not in its totality. And just one other note about this game. The last time these two teams met, Andrew, and again, much different quarterbacks, it was Cousins versus Matt Ryan. Do you remember what happened the last time the Colts and Vikings played? It was on a Saturday.
I don't.
Yeah.
It was the greatest comeback in the history of the National Football League.
33 points.
Yeah.
33 points.
Fun fact on that one.
Yeah.
NFL Network broadcast boot camp the following spring. So real quick here, broadcast boot camp when both current players and former players, it's a program run by Tracy Perlman in New York, player programs, and they bring players out to NFL Network. And it's not just NFL Network talent like yours truly at the time, but they bring in other broadcasters from all around the league to kind of run a 3-day workshop for current and former players who want to get into broadcasting. It's a really cool thing. From Patrick Peterson to Cam Hayward, like great guys come in. Rodney McLeod, who's still playing for the Browns, was one of those guys that came in, and I did some play-by-play reps with Rodney McLeod. I'm the play-by-play guy. He's the analyst, and they pick a game. They pick like a 5-minute stretch, 8-minute stretch, and they put the game on, and then we do the game. Like they give them a heads up. Rodney McLeod was playing for the Colts in that game in the secondary. That horrible, they blew the lead. That was the game.
Come on, that we used. Pranking. Someone's pranking you.
And, like he knew it, obviously. He walks in. I'm like, man, I am sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry you have to relive this. And so we're walking through it like, what a catch. And blah, 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 blah. And then it's like I'm turning to him and he's got to say what went wrong on the play.
Oh.
Like he was on the field. It wasn't his fault necessarily, but you know, it was just, you're calling out your teammates here, at that time, ex-teammates. Like, what'd that guy do wrong there? Or who lost contain on that? You get my point.
And by the way, for him, that had been the third time he's reliving that, because I'm sure film session that week was a pretty interesting one following the 33-point comeback. Oh man.
Point comeback. Rodney, also an awesome dude and a pillar in this Browns locker room here. That is going to be it for another edition of Thinking Out Loud. Everybody, enjoy your Week 9 games. We'll do the show next week. Back in Los Angeles in the home office. And if you think your team is already eliminated, if you think your team's season is over, let me just leave with this note. There were 2 teams last year that were sitting at 3-6 over and ended up making both the Rams and the Packers rallied from 3-6 deficits, 3-6 records, and made the postseason. I am telling you, your team has a chance. Unless you're the 3-5 Dallas Cowboys. I'm kidding. Your team has a chance. It ain't over. For Sam Batesh, I'm Andrew Siciliano. Enjoy your week 9, everybody. We'll catch you next time.